Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy, a one stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today. We are coming up with some very important sessions, initiatives for civil services aspirants, both who are appearing for prelims in 2026 as well as those who would be attempting mains in 2025. All that we need is your encouragement. Like these sessions, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss these initiatives. And let's get started and let's look at topic number one, editorial. Big deal. The US China trade deal will have implications for India. For civil services aspirants, you should not only be aware of what is happening in India, but also what is happening outside the boundaries of India. And sometimes what is happening behind the closed doors as well. And that is something that we will try and understand today in this lecture. The recent conflict between India and Pakistan. We used, although some of the indigenous equipments as well, for example, the Akash system, but we also used equipment that we had imported from Russia. And Pakistan relied heavily on the equipments which it imported from China. The leaders of both these countries, Russia and China, they came together in Moscow recently. Why? Because they had to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Allied powers in the World War II, because Russia was part of the Allied forces. And to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Allied forces in the World War II, Xi Jinping as well as Vladimir Putin, they met in Moscow. And there they reaffirmed their commitment and called each other that we are the friends of steel, reaffirming a strong commitment to each other, although their relationship initially was frosty. But then, when Mikhail Gorbachev became the president of Russia, this is when the relationship between Russia and China stabilized, and now they are very close to each other and calling each other the friends of steel. But this was happening right in front of the world's eyes. But in the backdrop, both these countries and their officials, they were working behind the closed doors and trying to strike a deal with the United States of America. This was their own ceasefire. Why? Because US wants Russia to end the war in Ukraine, which is going on for more than 2 to 3 years now. In fact, President Donald Trump, he has a golf buddy, somebody he plays golf with. Name is Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff is also the special envoy of United States to the Middle East. And Steve Witkoff has spent more time with Putin than any other world leader in the recent times. In fact, more FaceTime with Steve Witkoff than the FaceTime that Russian president has with Xi Jinping. And at the same time, China, because there was a tariff war between United States and China. Now, United States and China, they have decided to talk to each other. They have lowered tariffs on each other. Their trade talk is continuing. So, on the face of it, for the world, both these leaders were meeting and calling each other the friends of steel. And behind the closed doors, their officials were working and trying to strike their own ceasefire with United States of America. Clear? But be that as it may, the point is, what about Turkey? Turkey is also a country which has given enormous support to Pakistan in this conflict, and Turkey would export drones to Pakistan. And Turkey, remember, is an important member of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a military alliance. And one of the big reasons for Russia Ukraine conflict was Ukraine wanted to become part of NATO, in which United States is also a member. And when it is a military alliance, it basically means if you attack one member of NATO, it is as if you have attacked every country of NATO. That means all these countries will come together and defend the member who has been attacked. If Ukraine would have become the part of NATO, Ukraine is the neighbor of Russia. That means in the neighborhood of Russia, you will see the expansion of NATO. This is something which was not acceptable to Russia, and hence Russia invaded Ukraine and the war is continuing. In Turkey, now in Istanbul, tomorrow, there's going to be a big Thursday where the leaders of two countries, Ukraine and Russia, Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin, may meet each other together. And US President Donald Trump is saying, why are you leaving me away? I am also inclined to join and participate in this meeting. So something is happening in Turkey, in Istanbul, tomorrow when Russian president, in all likelihood, will be meeting Zelensky, and maybe they will try to put an end to this war which has been going on for 2 to 3 years. And maybe, in all likelihood, Donald Trump would also be participating in this meeting. Where does this leave Europe? Europe, in the sense, European countries would also want that they should also have a place on this negotiating table, on this diplomatic table. Because why would US, Russia together bilaterally decide the fate of Europe? Because Europe has been enormously supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia. So Europe is also not happy because Europe feels that we have been bypassed, where Donald Trump is directly negotiating with Putin to put an end to this conflict between Russia and Ukraine in the heart of Europe. Let's look at US President Donald Trump. He is a transactional president, believes in transactions. And in his first world tour after he became the president of the United States, he has chosen Middle East. And the first country that he has visited is Saudi Arabia, where red carpet was laid for Donald Trump. But not just that, sometimes there is an accusation against Donald Trump that he mixes his political clout with his personal business interests in this region, because after all, he is also a businessman. President Trump's son, Eric Trump, he is constructing a $5.5 billion golf course in Qatar. He has business interests in form of residential properties that is being constructed in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has now decided to invest in AI in association with United States, which Donald Trump says will fuel employment in United States. So Donald Trump's first visit, Saudi Arabia, he will also be visiting Qatar. He will also be visiting United Arab Emirates. And in the process, he would be skipping one of its closest allies in this region, which is Israel. And Israel has another enemy in this region, which is Iran. And what US president is also doing, negotiating with Iran as well, so that Iran comes on the diplomatic table, so that in one way or the other, we may revive the Iranian nuclear deal or joint comprehensive plan of action, which was signed between Iran and the five permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, plus Germany. European Union was also part of this, which restricted Iran's ability to build a nuclear weapon. But then United States under Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from this Iranian nuclear deal, and now he is also trying to negotiate with Iran so that a nuclear deal is signed. And in India, we should also be looking at these global developments which are taking place. And at the same time, look at the trade deal, the initial response to the trade deal between United States and China. That's something that we have to keep in mind. Qatar, on its part, because the next destination of President Trump is going to be Qatar as well. Qatar is planning to gift a $400 million worth ultra luxury jet, Boeing 747, to United States President Donald Trump, although he's planning to accept it. But there is a severe criticism of Donald Trump for accepting a personal gift from Qatar worth $400 million. But be that as it may, this is one interesting thing which is happening in the world politics today. And there is an ancient Chinese curse which says, may you live in interesting times. And these are the interesting times for the global community. But in India, we have to look at all these developments carefully because these developments will have an impact on India. What sort of impact? For example, Donald Trump came to power in United States in the backdrop of a campaign that he launched in US called MAGA, Make America Great Again. Because Donald Trump believed and felt that United States is fighting other countries' wars and gets nothing in return. United States is one of the biggest contributors in terms of finances, financial funding to international organizations, to other countries as well, and we get nothing. United States has opened up its economy for other countries, and what does United States get in return? Tariffs are imposed, restrictions are imposed on US goods exported to these countries. That is why, in the backdrop of this campaign, Make America Great Again, Donald Trump decided to impose tariffs on the exports coming from countries such as Mexico, such as Canada, such as China, and various other countries. This was viewed as retaliation by Donald Trump because US goods were restricted in these countries or high tariffs were imposed in these countries. But there was another element to this as well. Experts said that this is like a tactic by the US president to force these countries, because there was no other way to force these countries to lower down their tariffs on US goods. So, one way to do that is by escalating this matter, imposing enough tariffs on these goods so that these countries are forced to come on the negotiating table and reduce the tariffs. And in response to that, maybe it worked. And then Donald Trump decided to pause these tariffs for Mexico, for Canada, and various other countries, but not for China. And now, behind the closed doors, a deal has now been signed between US and China, although it is not a full fledged deal. In the interim measure, what China will do, China will reduce the tariffs imposed on US goods from 125% to 10%. United States, which had imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, United States, in an interim measure for 90 days, will reduce these tariffs from 145% to 30%. And then a full-fledged trade deal will be negotiated between United States and China. And how has the market reacted to this? Obviously, with enormous positivity, the global markets rose by 2 to 3.8%. And that is what led to the fall in the gold prices as well. Because when the conflict started between US and China, between US and various other countries, when tariffs were imposed, people hedged onto gold because gold was considered to be a safe investment in this climate of uncertainty. But once the uncertainty is beginning to be developed because of a trade deal between China and United States, the gold prices have also fallen. And in response to that, there are some countries which say that Donald Trump has come down from his rhetoric because he views that China is very, very important economically for United States. In fact, there is a trade deficit between United States and China, between United States and China, and it is considered to be $293 billion worth of trade deficit, which means United States is importing more from China than China is importing from United States. Although this deal has not addressed this very important issue for United States, which is the trade imbalance between US and China, but nevertheless, it is a good starting point for these two countries. But what is going to be its impact on India? Listen to me carefully. When tariffs were imposed on China, and China is a manufacturing giant, it manufactures everything under the sun. When China is the manufacturing giant of the world, there were companies which were reluctant now to further invest in China. Why? Because of the rising conflict and tensions between US and China. What was the other alternative for these companies to invest in and develop and manufacture? That was India. This is where various companies were considering India as an alternative to China because of this conflict between US and China in the form of a trade war. But if the things stabilize between China and United States, it will have a negative impact on India because the investor sentiment in China will rise. And those companies which had earlier thought of investing in India, they might go back to China and invest in China. It is going to impact India. Not just that, things are also not right between India and United States because United States has decided to impose duties on the steel and aluminum from India. And now we have approached the World Trade Organization, although it is almost defunct, but we still have approached the WTO with the hope that we want to reciprocate to these tariffs imposed by United States, and we also want to impose tariffs on the US goods, despite the fact that right now we are trying to negotiate a free trade agreement with United States. We have recently concluded a free trade agreement with United Kingdom. We are also in talks of concluding a free trade agreement with Chile, with Peru, with European Union, as well as United States. So US and China coming together in the form of a trade deal, a possible trade deal, it will have an investor confidence in China back again. It will impact negatively the investor sentiment for India. And at the same time, we are in some form of a trade conflict with United States at the WTO. Then we have a trade deficit with China as well. In fact, it is argued that the trade deficit between India and China is $99.2 billion, which also means that we are importing more from China than China is importing from us. Prime Minister Modi launched a massive campaign called Make in India, where he wanted to project India as a manufacturing superpower of the world. And it was argued that we also want to become the global factory for the entire world. Why should China have all the fun? This was critiqued by the then RBI governor, Mr. Raghuram Rajan, as well, who said that we should not be making in India for the world. Our initial response, our first purpose should be make in India for India. That means we should be making in India to satisfy and satiate the domestic demand rather than the global demand, because according to him, the world is never going to accept another China, and there is no space for another China. But even then, this Make in India campaign was launched to give boost to the manufacturing sector. Because the paradox of Indian economy is normally what happens when a nation's economy grows, the contribution of agriculture to this nation's economy should have to come down, and the contribution of manufacturing has to go up. The biggest contributor to an economy has to be the manufacturing sector because this is the sector which generates more jobs. But in India, it is an exception amongst all the global economies, powerful global economies, emerging global economies, that in India we are driven more by the services sector and not the manufacturing sector. It is the services sector which contributes 55% to Indian economy. And service sector, my dear, by the way, is not good enough in terms of job creation. That is why we call India's growth story as a jobless growth. Because although our economy has increased, our GDP has grown, but it has grown more because of the services sector, which has not led to increase or massive increase, commensurate increase in the jobs. And the Hindu editorial says our Make in India campaign is intrinsically linked to the Chinese imports, in the sense that we say we have a Make in India campaign that we want to manufacture goods in India. But to manufacture these goods, the raw material we are importing from China. And in fact, it is argued that if parts are imported from China and we just assemble these parts in India and then we call it Make in India product, whereas it is not in reality a Make in India product because the goods, the parts, the raw material have been imported from China, which primarily means that we need to do something and we need to up the ante. And for that, the Hindu editorial says that the center must talk to the states because land is within the domain of the states. Land is a state subject. Center should talk to the states to implement these land reforms so that land is easily made available to the factories. Ease of doing business has to be enhanced, something that we have been repeating ad nauseum. We have to implement land reform so that land is available quickly for the companies to set up factories and industries in India. The the permit system, the so called permissions that companies will have to take from various government departments to establish, set up the factories and companies. This should be, the red tape should be minimized or eradicated so that ease of doing business is increased, and labor reforms. Labor reforms does not necessarily mean that we should implement, like in China, hire and fire policy, but labor reforms so that it becomes lucrative for the companies to invest in India, set up factories in India, attract good talent in India at a relatively cheaper price so that our products become competitive in the world economy. And for that, what we need, increasing dependence on China. It has to come down. That is one way in which we can respond to this upcoming trade deal between United States and China, because that is going to impact the economy of India. That is why this question on your screen, despite geopolitical tensions, China remains one of India's largest trading partners, with the trade deficit widening year after year. Examine the reasons for the persistent trade imbalance between India and China. What is the reason? And suggest viable policy measures to reduce this deficit while ensuring national economic and strategic interests. Improve ease of doing business, implement land reforms, labor reforms, make the labor cheaply available in India so that our produced goods will have a competitive advantage in the world economy. Yeah, great. Let's look at another topic. India asserts stand on Kashmir after US claims. For that, let's go back in time. When India and Pakistan were born as two independent nations in 1947, with the partition of this country, unfortunately on religious grounds, there was a sticking point with regards to Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir then was a princely state. And you would know that these princely states were given options: either join the dominion of India or join the dominion of Pakistan, or you can stay independent as well. And Jammu and Kashmir Maharaja Hari Singh at that time decided to stay independent. But this is something which was not acceptable to Pakistan, and Pakistan sent its tribals, its army, to fight a war in Jammu and Kashmir and wanted to forcibly acquire Jammu and Kashmir. This led to a war between India and Pakistan because we had signed the instrument of accession with the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir. Then, in what is considered to be the biggest diplomatic blunder by the then government led by Pandit Nehru, we approached United Nations, because United Nations was created, established as a global organization to prevent a third world war. And if this could result in a third world war, we have to stop it. And in all our naivety and innocence, we approached the United Nations so that United Nations can punish the aggressor, which is Pakistan, and help Jammu and Kashmir integrate with the Union of India. But then United Nations Security Council passed a resolution calling for plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir, what is known as the right to self determination. Let the people of Jammu and Kashmir decide whether they want to be part of India or they want to be part of Pakistan. And there was no third option of independence. You have to choose either of the two options, India or Pakistan. And the government of India later on regretted, because United Nations, then as it is today, was under the grip of United States. United States was a close friend of Pakistan because Pakistan had decided to join CENTO, Central Treaty Organization, had allied with the United States. And in India, we had chartered our independent foreign policy in the form of NAM, Non-Aligned Movement. And that is why United States favored Pakistan, and then United Nations Security Council passed a resolution calling for plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir. And this is how Jammu and Kashmir matter was internationalized. And this matter, a turning point came during the 1971 war between India and Pakistan, which led to the emergence of Bangladesh as an independent country in which India played a very important role. In fact, at that time, when Shrimati Indira Gandhi was the prime minister, there was enormous pressure on Indira Gandhi to succumb, to surrender, and to make peace with Pakistan and not lead to the independence of Bangladesh. But then we did not succumb with the tacit support from Russia as well. And ultimately, this war, India and Pakistan War of 1971, Pakistan was decisively defeated. And then 93,000 prisoners of war were taken. The prisoners, the army of Pakistan were taken as prisoners of war by India. And then a Shimla agreement was signed in 1971 between India and Pakistan. And this Shimla agreement said Jammu and Kashmir is going to be a bilateral issue. So the issue which was internationalized in 1948, where United Nations Security Council resolution calling for a plebiscite was invoked, suddenly this matter becomes now a bilateral matter between India and Pakistan. And this was further reiterated by future talks that we had with Pakistan. The famous Lahore Declaration of 1998 also called Jammu and Kashmir as an outstanding issue between India and Pakistan, which means a bilateral issue, which means we will not use United Nations, we will not respect or accept mediation by international organizations or international community in resolving this Jammu and Kashmir matter. And suddenly, when India and Pakistan conflict, the recent conflict broke out, and it seemed that we are in the midst of a full fledged war between the two countries, suddenly there was a social media post by the US President Donald Trump where he took the credit and said both the countries have shown maturity and they have agreed to an immediate and full ceasefire. And a follow up to this post, Donald Trump also claims that we are ready to mediate between India and Pakistan on Kashmir. So the internationalization of the issue in 1948, then it becomes a bilateral issue in 1971 onwards, and now suddenly we see the internationalization of Jammu and Kashmir again. As a civil services aspirant, what should you know about the stance taken by India on these issues raised by the US Donald Trump? One, United States says that we brokered peace ceasefire between India and Pakistan, to which we have responded by saying that it is not United States which brokered peace or ceasefire. It is after our attacks by the Indian Air Force on the military bases in Pakistan, which also hit their very important Noor Khan base in Pakistan. This is where Pakistan thought that we are going to collapse under this onslaught by Indian Air Force. And it was the request from the DGMO of Pakistan, the Director General of Military Operations in Pakistan. They requested India that we are ready to drop the fire, to stop the fire, and implement ceasefire. To which we accepted because, in any case, war was not something that was on our mind. We did not initiate this conflict. This conflict was initiated by Pakistan with the Pahalgam attack. We only retaliated, targeting the terror bases in Pakistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir. We were, in any case, never going for a war. So, this is not a US brokered peace between India and Pakistan. This is something that, after the effective Indian Air Force strikes on Pakistani air bases and military bases, Pakistan requested for a ceasefire and we accepted it. That's number one. Number two, it was also alleged by Donald Trump that we averted a nuclear conflict between the two countries. And what are the signs for that? It is argued that Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, had called a meeting of National Command Authority, which is the authority responsible for taking decisions on nuclear weapons, on the use of nuclear weapons. So the media also highlighted that a National Command Authority meeting is going to take place, presided over by the Pakistani Prime Minister. So they may be using nuclear weapons against India. And this has been the long policy of Pakistan, using its nuclear weapons as a blackmail against India and blackmailing world community that if you don't mediate, if you don't interfere, if you don't stop India, we are going to use nuclear weapons. And Donald Trump is saying that we have averted a nuclear flashpoint, to which we have responded saying no. One, we will not be threatened by this nuclear blackmail anymore. And second, this conflict they had not reached the nuclear threshold. We were only dealing in conventional military domain. So there were Indian Air Force strikes, there were military strikes, but we had not escalated it to a nuclear threshold, and we are not going to give in to this nuclear blackmail. Third, Donald Trump says that I told both these countries that if you don't stop war, I'm not going to trade with you. And I'm going to stop trade with both the countries. And both the countries want to trade with us. And in response to that, both the countries, because they want to trade with United States, they dropped fire, hold fire, and then the ceasefire was announced. To which we have responded that there was no such discussion on trade during Operation Sindoor. None at all. So trade was never a point of discussion between India and United States. Fourth, will mediate on Kashmir. On that, Prime Minister Modi, when he addressed the nation a day before at 8 o'clock, he categorically said that if at all we are going to talk to Pakistan, it's going to be on two matters. One, it is going to be on terrorism because talks and terror cannot go together. Blood and water cannot go together, which primarily means that we are not going to go back on Indus Water Treaty. We have kept IWT under abeyance unless and until Pakistan takes credible steps to dismantle the terror infrastructure on her soil. And if at all talks are going to happen, it's going to happen on the illegally occupied Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So we want the return of Pakistan occupied Kashmir. That is where the talks will take place. Talks will take place on terror. Talks will take place on Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, not on the territory, which is an integral part of India called Jammu and Kashmir. Another matter, it is argued by experts that for a long period of time, we had consciously cultivated a stance where world leaders, global community, should not hyphenate India and Pakistan, refer to India and Pakistan in the same breath, as if we are intertwined with each other. India is one of the biggest global markets for the world. We are an emerging superpower. We are an emerging global power. Our intention is that we want to become a developed country, a Viksit Bharat by 2047. And for that, we don't want to be hyphenated with Pakistan. So, this hyphenation of India and Pakistan, we have categorically denied this, saying international community has stood with us when it comes to matters related to terrorism. In fact, the countries which are closer to Pakistan, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, they have also unequivocally supported India's fight against terrorism. And last, India and Pakistan will talk at a neutral venue as alleged by US President Donald Trump. We have also categorically stated that nothing of this sort has ever been planned. No such discussion has taken place. We are not going to talk to Pakistan at a neutral venue. If at all we are going to talk to Pakistan, it is going to be on terrorism and Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And on this, there is an editorial in today's newspaper as well, and this editorial also talks about the symbolism. Look at what Prime Minister Modi did yesterday. Went to Adampur, which is near Jalandhar, some 100 kilometers from the international border, and addressed the military men. And it was a symbolic gesture. Why? Because the campaign, the information warfare which was launched by Pakistan, the disinformation, the misinformation campaign which was launched by Pakistan. Pakistan had claimed that we have attacked the Adampur airbase. And remember, it is the Adampur airbase where we have S-400 defense system, which we had imported from Russia. And if you look at this, look at the screen. Behind Prime Minister Modi, you will see S-400 defense system firmly intact. So, this disinformation campaign, which was launched by Pakistan, saying we have attacked the Adampur airbase and we have also destroyed the S-400 defense system, to negate both these vicious claims by Pakistan, Prime Minister Modi, as a symbolic gesture, went to Adampur, addressed the media and addressed the military men, and gave a strong signal to the world community, reaffirmed our stance against terrorism, and also depicted how Adampur Air Base is untouched and how S-400 defense system have not been attacked. And remember, it is the same S-400 defense system which the world community tried to pressurize India not to import it from Russia, where we were also threatened with sanctions under CATSA. Because in 2016, the US Congress passed a law called CATSA, Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. That means how do we counter the adversaries, the enemies of United States, such as Russia, such as North Korea, such as Iran. We are going to counter these adversaries by imposing sanctions. And whoever will carry out transactions of significant nature with these three adversaries of United States, we will impose sanctions on them. But because of the diplomatic prowess of India, we managed to come out of it. We were exempted from this. So even if we imported S-400 defense system from Russia, no sanctions were imposed on India. This speaks volumes about the diplomatic power that we have enjoyed over a period of time. And that is the crux of this editorial as well. Mr. Modi's visit to Adampur, 100 kilometers from the border, and also a site of India's Russian made S-400 air defense system, disproved Pakistan's claim that this base was hit during the recent military standoff. And at the same time, this editorial talks about how the TRP media wars. Because if there was one casualty in this conflict between India and Pakistan, the another casualty was the declining and further annihilation of the credibility of some of the media channels. Wherein some of the media channels said Islamabad has already been captured. We have encroached the airspace and we have done this, and that. This editorial highlights the dangers of such frenzy in the media who is driven by the TRP, television rating points, because more number of people watching a television show, which means more advertising revenue will be given to that, which means more advertisers will want to advertise their products in this particular show because it is being watched by a massive audience, which means you want to expose your products to such a massive audience. And that is how these television channels, they go on this war frenzy, they go on such polarizing debates to attract audience, and through that, in this TRP media war, they want to attract the advertising revenue as well. Hindu editorial says quiet diplomacy and covert operations may not be suitable for this TRP driven media, but may be suitable for Indian interest. Maybe in a sense that even if we have to carry out covert operations, we might kill Hafiz Saeed, although that is something which has never been our agenda. We are not a rogue state such as Pakistan and other countries which carry out these covert operations. But even if there are these covert operations that we need to carry, maybe hit the terror bases in Pakistan, for that, maybe we should also not popularize them or broadcast them or chest thump them. Why? Because then the enemy, the adversary, will be forced to retaliate because they also have to cater to their domestic audience. Because domestic audience would also be wanting their countries to take action against those countries which are waging war against them. That is why quiet diplomacy and covert operations may be best suitable to deal with the adversary and not the TRP driven frenzy. Clear? Any questions as of now? Okay. Now, India has expelled Pakistan High Commission staffer on the charges of spying. And for that, we need to understand what is this Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. This convention is a United Nations convention, has been ratified by more than 190 countries of the world, including India. And this UN Convention or Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations is the product of Cold War. And what is this Cold War? After the Second World War, the world became bipolar. Two superpowers emerged on the world stage. One, United States, the other, USSR. And then the hostility between the two countries was so severe that we assumed that if not today, tomorrow there will be a full blown hot war between the two countries. Missiles may be fired, nuclear hydrogen weapons may be used. But luckily, no ammunition was fired, but then this hostility continued. This is where the diplomats of United States, they were attacked or they were mistreated by those countries which are close to USSR. And USSR replied in the same manner, US replied in the same manner. So this tit for tat continued to take place, which means the diplomats which are posted in foreign countries, they were working in fair, they were working under retribution, and they were not working in peace. To save these diplomats, the countries of the world decided to come together and lay down a criteria, lay down the basis for what was called as diplomatic immunity. And what is this diplomatic immunity? If tomorrow, when you clear the civil services examination, you will get an IFS post, Indian Foreign Service, then let's say you are posted in Pakistan as a diplomat in the Indian embassy at Islamabad. You cannot be arrested. That is the immunity that you will have. You cannot be arrested. In fact, your private residence also cannot be entered into by the Pakistani army or by the Pakistani rangers. Why? Because your private property, your private residence is inviolate. That is the diplomatic immunity. In fact, the Indian embassy in Islamabad is also inviolate. That means you can say that this is the Indian territory within the Pakistani territory where the Pakistani army, Pakistani security forces cannot enter this Indian embassy without the permission of the head of the embassy. This is what we call diplomatic immunity. And as a diplomat, you cannot be arrested at all. Even if you commit crimes, even if you commit horrific crimes, there is diplomatic immunity, you will not be arrested. No action can be taken against. And the only action that the host country can take against you is that you may be declared as persona non grata, which primarily means in Latin, an unwelcome person, which means the host country will declare you as persona non grata, and ultimately you will be given a time period within which you have to leave that country. If you don't leave that country during that time period, the diplomatic immunity you will lose. And while describing somebody or designating somebody as a persona non grata, you don't have to even give reasons. Although we may give reasons that because of spying, because of interference in domestic affairs, because of any offensive misconduct or conduct, we are declaring you, designating you as the persona non grata. But this is considered to be a sovereign right of the host country, even without attributing reasons, even without assigning reasons. You may be declared persona non grata and you have to leave. And this diplomat, this staffer at the High Commission of Pakistan in New Delhi, was declared persona non grata and he was given 24 hours to leave this country. If he doesn't leave in 24 hours, he will lose the diplomatic immunity. So, for that, you need to understand what is this Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations? Why was it brought about? How is it a product of the Cold War? What are the important features of Vienna Convention? For example, you cannot be arrested. You have diplomatic immunity. The embassy has the diplomatic immunity. The premises are inviolate. Your private residence is also inviolate. The action that can be taken against you is that you can be declared as the persona non clear. Let's look at another topic, the right to repair movement in India. What does that mean? You go to a shop, for example, Tata Chroma, or you go to a Reliance Digital, or you go to any other shop, you go to any other showroom, and you have to buy appliances. Let's say these are home appliances, washing machine, refrigerator. You will see ratings are given. Ratings are pasted on the face of this appliance. Rating is star rating. Star rating is on the basis of the energy it can consume, the power it can consume. So if an AC has a 5-star rating, that means it is going to consume less electricity. If an appliance is given 1 star or 2 star, which means it will consume more power, which means you will have to shell out more money when it comes to your electricity bill. Similarly, tomorrow when you go to a showroom and you have to buy another appliance, the government is considering, the Department of Consumer Affairs, it is considering a framework on repairability index. Repairability index in the sense, this appliance that you are planning to buy, how easy it would be to repair this appliance when it malfunctions or when it stops functioning or when there is some problem in the functioning of this appliance. And for that, apart from star rating, we may also attach another index to these appliances called repairability index. How? We will look at it. How easy will it be to repair these appliances? And how can we decide how easy is it to repair this appliance? By looking at the availability of spare parts, whether the spare parts are readily, easily available in the market or not. By looking at what is the cost of repair, by looking at the availability of information. Service centers, where are they? At what distance are these? What is the number of these service centers? Do we have only one service center to service the entire country, or there are multiple service centers within the cities as well? What is the availability of information on service centers? What is the cost of repair? What is the availability of the spare parts? Soft Software upgrades if we have to do. On all these bases, every appliance will be given a repairability index so that it is good for a consumer. As a consumer, I want to buy a product which is easily repairable. I want to buy a product, an appliance, which will consume less electricity so that I can save on my electricity bill as well. Clear? That is the purpose of this repairability index. But for that, let's look at something else. A few years ago, I was talking to one contractor. He was laying down a road, he was doing the black topping on that road. But then I would also inform him that the previous road that you participated in constructing the road previously, that has developed potholes. Why are you doing this? Why can't you develop, manage, construct a road which can last for a long period of time? A small amount of rain here and there, and your entire road collapses, develops potholes. He gave me an interesting answer. He said, if we are going to if we are going to construct a road which is going to last for a long time, then next year, what are we going to do? What are we going to earn? How are we going to sustain our families as well? So, is it that they deliberately manage, manufacture, construct something so that it does not last forever? Because if it doesn't last forever, the consumer will have to buy it again. This is what we call planned obsolescence. That means you plan the products in such a manner that they will become obsolete over a period of time, and then you will have to buy new products. For example, you may have heard previously, or when you talk to your parents or elders in your family, that the refrigerator that we had bought previously, let's say Godrej Cold Gold Puff, the refrigerator of the 90s, it is still running. It is still in good shape, best shape. But the refrigerators that we buy now, they malfunction after a few years. They sometimes malfunction within a year as well. So is it that deliberately the products which were manufactured previously, they last for a long period of time, and the newly made products, they don't last for a long period of time. They malfunction very quickly. Is it that these manufacturers, they plan this obsolescence to ensure that they remain relevant? Their products, new products that they will manufacture, will now be sold to these consumers. This is one aspect. Second aspect is, Maybe the usage of raw materials that we use in manufacturing these products, for example, copper, for example, plastics, for example, steel. To reduce the cost of manufacturing these products, we sometimes compromise on the raw material, we compromise on the products which are used to manufacture this equipment. For example, Volkswagen Group is long considered in India as a group which manufactures very sturdy cars, where even if there is a car which will hit you, nothing will happen to this Volkswagen car. But if something happens, you hit against a Maruti Suzuki or a Hyundai car, they will collapse like a matchstick. But now Volkswagen Group, in order to stay relevant in India, to reduce the cost of manufacturing cars, they have also started using inferior material in the newly made cars. For example, Taygun, for example, Skoda Kushaq, or Volkswagen Virtus. Why? Because you want to reduce your cost of manufacturing a car or a product, because you want to remain relevant in the price sensitive market such as India. Because when you buy a car, you also ask what is the price, and at the same time you also ask what is the mileage, without asking maybe, although now the sensitivity has increased, without asking maybe what is the air safety, how many airbags does it have. So you may compromise on the safety, but you don't want to compromise on the mileage. But be that as it may, what this column talks about, it says number one, there are these companies which go for planned obsolescence, which means they would manufacture products in such a manner that they don't last for a long period of time so that their new products would have a consumer. And at the same time, there are companies which will also use inferior raw material so as to bring down the cost of your product so that it becomes economically competitive for the consumer. That is what we call planned obsolescence. But at the same time, repair. Repair in the sense you have an iPhone and it has stopped functioning. Maybe you have developed a crack on your screen and now you want to replace the screen. You may go to a local repair shop or you may go to the Apple Service Center. Apple Service Center tells you that the cost would be 35,000, and you calculate the cost and you say 35,000 plus I may, if I sell this old iPhone I may get 20,000. I will put 20,000 more and buy a new iPhone. Or if you go to a local repair shop, he will say give me 10,000, I will repair it. I will give you a new screen. And in fact, this new screen will be the same screen which will be manufactured by that manufacturer which gives Apple its screens. But Apple tells you if someone else opens this phone, then you will lose the warranty. We are not going to take care of this device. Which means there are companies which are deliberately trying to do what? They restrict the spare parts. They restrict the technological know how to fix this. And they tell you that you will lose your warranty if you let this device be opened by somebody who is not authorized by us. So you have to get these products serviced by the authorized service center only, such as the McDonald's ice cream machines, soft cone. If you are a fan of these McD's soft cones, if these machines malfunction, they can be repaired only by the authorized technicians of the Taylor company, which manufactures these machines. Why? This is like their circular economy. We will give these McD franchisees our ice cream vending machine. And if it malfunctions, we only will service it. So we will get more circular revenue by fixing these machines which malfunction over a period of no one else can fix them. This is where there is a difference in our approach to this repairability as compared to United States. In United States, there is a right to repair movement where spare parts should be made readily available. I don't have to necessarily go to an authorized service center to service my appliance or to fix the malfunctioning of my appliance. I should go to anybody. These companies should have the responsibility of ensuring the spare parts are readily available, the technological know-how to fix these machines are readily available. But in India, our focus has not been on this form of right to repair. Our focus has been on let's say, the right to repair portal that we have launched. The Department of Consumer Affairs, it has launched right to repair portal. And what is this portal? It tells us in one single destination, it tells us about the customer care details of various brands, all the major consumer products. What is their consumer care number is listed in this portal. So you have a one stop destination for the customer care numbers of all the major brands in India. Not just that, warranty and post sale information. What is the warranty of this product? What is the post sale information? Every such detail is provided in this portal. And at the same time, links to service center networks of all these brands. So we don't believe in the kind of right to repair movement which is being fought in United States currently. We believe in a different form of right to repair where we have a right to repair. We have a consumer portal called right to repair portal, which talks about only information related to these brands, which only talks about information related to the service centers. But even then, we still haven't given the right to a consumer in India that you can get your product serviced by any local shop without losing out on your warranty. Because you go to a premium authorized service center, the charges will be huge. You go to a local repair shop, the charges will be less than half. That is the right to repair movement that we need in India, according to this. And at the same time, when this Department of Consumer Affairs announced this framework on repairability index, majority of the people who were involved in making this framework, these were the people from the industry. These were the people who were part of the manufacturing. And obviously, they will favor their own industry, they will favor their own. That is the crux of this article called the right to repair movement in India. Clear? Any questions? Okay. Now let's look at the last column that we have to discuss today. Ecology is the world's permanent economy. Let's understand. You may have read about, heard of Mr. Sundarlal Bahuguna, someone from Uttarakhand who is considered to be the foremost environmentalist in India. He was part of the Chupko movement and then he fought against the Tehri Dam as well, considered to be an environmentalist, a foremost Indian environmentalist. He gave a powerful phrase in which he said ecology is the permanent economy. And this phrase is the reminder that humans can progress, development can take place only if we are ensuring the ecological development as well. This is the often repeated question that we ask. We want development, but at what cost? Development for whom and at what cost? Would it be development if we level the mountains? Would it be development if we destroy the ecological balance? Would it be development if we flush out the wild animals and the forest, the flora and fauna, and construct factories and industries in these forest areas? Something which has been alleged that is being done in the Great Nicobar area, where important flora and fauna, some ecologically endangered species would lose out if we construct a project in the Great Nicobar region. And this column says, human prosperity is fundamentally dependent upon the ecological well being. If our ecology is sustainable, if our forests ecosystem is taken care of, humans can also develop at the same time, and they are fundamentally linked to each other. If you destroy ecology, human prosperity will also collapse over a period of time. For example, economic development cannot be sustained by depleting natural resources. If you deplete natural resources in the form of rivers or lakes, because we encroach upon lakes for the construction of buildings, we have encroached into the forest areas for the construction of and for the establishment of the factories. And if you do that by depleting the natural resources, your economy may flourish initially, but it will collapse later because these are interdependent on each other. We have scientifically understood various phenomena. For example, can we predict earthquake? We can't. But can we predict hurricane, tsunami, cyclone, and the destruction that will be caused because of these disorders? Yes, we can do that. So we have developed a scientific understanding of various environmental systems. If monsoon is going to be preponed this time, and the monsoon may earlier hit Kerala than it used to hit previously, so that is the scientific understanding that we have had of our environmental systems. But it has to come with moral realization. Morally, we should also have a realization that without taking care of flora and fauna, without taking care of our ecology, without taking care of our natural resources, we are not going to sustain for a long time. The earth is going to be an unlivable place over a period of time. Look at the climate change and the risks that climate change has posed to us. And I'm going to present some data as well towards the end. Our cities are becoming unlivable because of the population, because of the pollution. And that is also because of the rising population. So we need moral realization as well. And what this column also says is that there is historical disconnection from nature. What we do today, although we are part of this animal kingdom, but so are others as well, other creatures as well. But what these other creatures do, they live for the day, we live for the future, in a sense that they will eat something that they need today. They will work towards something that is their requirement for the day, but we stockpile resources. We stockpile resources, we extract, we go for excessive mining because these things are required for a later period of time as well. So we are the unique creatures in this animal kingdom which stockpile resources, which leads to over exploitation, and then it creates this imbalance. Nature based solutions and their limits. How do we respond to this ecological disaster or imbalance? Then we say we will go for afforestation. What is known as, for example, when we do environment impact assessment, then we go for compensatory afforestation as well. Compensatory afforestation, if we are going to clean Great Nicobar area, then we have to compensate this loss of biodiversity. And how do we compensate? We will compensate in Haryana. So, how do we respond? By afforestation, by we will conserve these wetlands, we will preserve them, we will develop more lakes as well. And at the same time, we are causing damage to the same ecosystem. So, destroying lakes in one area and then proclaiming that we are going to take steps to revive lakes in other areas by destroying ecosystem in one area and then saying that we will preserve ecosystem in another area by felling trees in one area and then saying we will compensate it by resorting to afforestation in another area. It is not going to serve any purpose because all you are doing is that you are continuing to damage the same ecosystem that you wish to protect and recreate. That's the paradox according to the author. We need to revisit, go beyond technology, policy interventions, and somehow develop the moral and emotional connect that we all had towards the nature. We had that emotional connect with the nature. We would worship nature. That emotional connect is missing now because we want to destroy, ransack the nature and our ecosystem for our lust for greed and development. And that emotional reconnection has to be reignited if we have to preserve our planet. Although not mentioned in this article, but let's look at the global examples. Let's look at Bhutan, for example. Bhutan does not view its development only in terms of the GDP, because those numbers can be misleading. Bhutan looks at the global happiness, and happiness is also related to the ecological health. So, what Bhutan does, it prioritizes happiness and ecological health. And it is necessary in Bhutan that we have to maintain 60% forest cover in Bhutan, recognizing the need for our nature. And nature and development, they have to go hand in hand. One cannot work without the other, survive without the other. Ecuador, for example, amended the constitution in 2008. And what they did, it became the first country in the world to legally recognize the rights of the ecosystem. An ecosystem is now considered as a legal person. As a legal person, ecosystem can fight cases in the court. So ecosystems have been declared as juristic personality in Ecuador. Something that our courts also tried to do previously, although those were negated, where Ganga was declared, Yamuna was declared as a juristic personality. And Ganga could have fought a case before the Supreme Court, challenging its violation of rights because it has the right to preserve itself. That's the concept of juristic personality. According to World Bank, in India, this environmental degradation, that's the data that I was referring to. According to World Bank, in India, because of environmental degradation, we have lost or we lose 5.7% of our GDP annually to pollution, to land degradation, and we deplete our water resources. And that is the cost of development. So if your sense is that by leveling forests, by leveling mountains, if we are going to embark on the journey of development, by destroying this ecological balance, you are further reducing your contribution to the GDP. Costa Rica, for example, it was once deforested, and now it has more than 50% forest cover. These are the interventions that we need in India. How? Because they have payment for ecosystem services, which means if there is a landlord and this landlord is maintaining forests, you compensate them, you pay for their ecosystem services. And that is how it was once deforested. Now it has over 50% forest cover. That's what we need to do in India as well. Incentivize. If we can have a PLI scheme, performance linked incentive scheme for, let's say, the electric vehicle makers, the battery makers, we can also have a compensation incentive kind of a thing for people as well so that they can maintain the forest cover. Germany, for example, Germany went for energy transition. It was their national effort, a national program where they wanted to move towards renewable energy. And not only have they become self sufficient in their energy needs and requirements, it has also created thousands of green jobs. So, if you're investing in green technology, it is not a wastage. You're going to contribute towards employment generation as well. Similarly, New Zealand's well being budget. There in New Zealand, they focus on mental health, they focus on indigenous communities as well, and they focus on environment as well. And this is what is required as well. And what is required? We need to teach our school, because in our schools every year there are symposiums and seminars conducted on Earth Day, Environment Day, and there are speeches given by principals, speeches given by the students about how we should save the environment. It should go beyond these symposiums and Earth Day or Environment Day events. We have to integrate our curriculum with ecological literacy, and we have to teach our kids how they are emotionally, and they should be emotionally connected to the nature, because we were once connected to the nature emotionally. That is something that we need to reteach our kids. What we also need is incentivize the sustainable lifestyles. Lifestyle in the sense, imagine it this way: our roads are not good enough for cars to ply on. But be that as it may, Tell me one place in India which is friendly for cycling. If we have to reduce our dependence on cars, if we have to reduce our dependence on public transport, if we have to reduce dependence upon these carbon products, we have to create alternatives. Why can't we create alternative in the form of beautiful cycling pathways through which people can cycle to their offices and back? That's something that we need to do. If it can't be done urgently, but this has to be our long term project. We have to reduce the carbon footprint in India. Urban farming, how you can even use green buildings, popularizing, promoting the solar capacity. And for that, we also need the TK, what is known as the traditional knowledge. Traditional communities, the tribal communities, those who are wedded to the nature, they know how to remain in peace with the nature. Let's learn from them so that we can incorporate their learnings in our everyday life and live with the nature. Because we don't have to treat nature as a commodity. We have to treat nature as a kin, a respectable member of our family, and let's live together. That's how we can make this world a better place to live in. This can be important, interesting topic for your essay. And that is your essay topic for today. Write in 1200 words. Ecology is the permanent economy. That is it for today. Thank you so much for staying with me. I'll see you again when I see you. Till then, have a great time. All the best. Bye bye. Stay safe.